Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome out there in Blog Talk Radio land and over at Rainbow Soul and iTunes. We get a lot of listeners from iTunes who are tuning in to our show. We started with Rainbow Soul, actually, going into our 15th year. So I want to welcome our new listeners, and I will introduce the show for our new listeners. But we have a lot of loyal listeners who've been with us for going on 15 years now. I want to thank each of those listeners. But I want to drop this thought with you before we introduce the show and our awesome guest this morning. And the thought I want to leave with you is, when you do something out of love, you don't count the cost. And isn't that so true? Welcome, you guys. For those in the United States, it depends on what part of the United States you're in. Remember, if you practice daylight savings time where you live, it ends this weekend, so we get to fall back, roll those clocks back an hour early Sunday morning, so get another hour of sleep. So welcome again to our Saturday, November the 2nd show, and you are listening to the Winning Book Radio Show, Off The Shelff. And we do have a talented author on deck for you, and somebody who's been active in television as well. But before we introduce you to our guest, Off The Shelff listeners, I have to ask you, how good of a mystery sleuth are you? Do you really like mystery? I love mysteries like Columbo, and there's another one my brother was telling me about, a TV show, but just reading a mystery book or watching a TV or going to the movies, a mystery, I've always, since I was a kid, want to figure out who did it before it is revealed. And sometimes some people are very good at it. They pay so much close attention. Every clue in the story gives you a hint to what really, really happened. If you love a mystery, I encourage you to get a copy of Love Pour Over Me. But not only that, if you value relationships and love, there's a soulmate relationship in here. And this story kicks off when Raymond, he's a track and field star on his way to the Olympics, and he's also very academically talented. He grows up in a troubled home, though. But when he and Brenda meet in college, they're soulmates. But this is not a smooth and easy relationship. So if you really value love and the twists and turns our lives go in, how long would you wait for the relationship you know you're meant to be in? If you value love and family, and there are 4 friends in here, I think you're going to, these 4 dude friends are lifetime friends and what they go through. And is one of them involved in the murder in the story? If you like mystery and relationships, and you just like to hang on the edge of your seat while you're reading a book, I encourage you to get a copy of Love Pour Over Me now. It's an ebook and print. If you don't see it at the library, at the bookstore, just ask the clerk, tell them you want to order a copy of Love Pour Over Me by Denise Turney, and they can order a copy for you because it's carried by the largest book distributors in the world. And remember, when you do something out of love, you don't count the cost. And now let us go and meet our very special off-the-shelf guest. And our special guest this morning is Gordon Castelnero. I hope I say his name correctly. If I don't, I hope he corrects me. Now, Gordon has produced documentaries for Detroit television. Told you he was involved in TV. He is a Christian who has authored books such as Staying on the Vine, TV Land Detroit, and Earl Scruggs, a Bluegrass Banjo Legend. Gordon graduated from California State University with a degree in radio, television, and film. And while in Detroit, he worked at WNIC Radio, where he learned to produce shows. He and a friend started Cambiare Entertainment after receiving rejections for a television documentary idea that they had. Now, the documentary, Michigan, is started here, aired on December 7th, 1996. The show was a hit, earning an 11.5 rating and a Michigan Emmy nomination. Now, Gordon went on to write and produce 2 more documentaries, Michigan and the American Dream in 1998, and Titanic, the final chapter, in 1999. He has written more than 25 television show proposals and earned more than 6 Michigan Emmy nominations. Gordon lives in Michigan with his wife and daughter, and you can find Gordon online at dreamworldenterprises.net/Castelnero.html, and I'm going to spell it DREAMONDENTERPRISES.net/CASTELNERO.html. We're delighted to have Gordon with us this morning. Welcome to Off the Shelf, Gordon.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Denise. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning.
Oh, and then we look forward to what you share, especially you are one of the, now we've had a movie producer on, one or two movie producers, maybe even three on Off the Shelf, but this is you're the first person with as much television. We have had an actress on here recently who has a book out, but the most television experience, I think you are a first. So it is absolutely a pleasure to have you with us on Off the Shelf. The first few questions I'm going to ask you, I ask every guest.
Sure.
When I started this show almost 15 years ago, I would just go right into the questions. And listeners sent me emails and said, could you just give us a little backstory on the guest before you go into questions? So the first few questions I'm going to ask you, I ask every guest who comes on the show. So to kick it off, Gordon, could you tell Off the Shelf listeners what life was like for you growing up in Detroit?
Well, I grew up in a suburb of Detroit, in the city of Livonia. That's where I spent most of my life, and it was just a typical suburban upbringing. I don't really know much more to elaborate on that. I graduated from high school in 1983. I went to community college here in Michigan for a few years, and then I decided I wanted to pursue a career in Hollywood, and so I went to college out in Long Beach, California. To do that, I got a bachelor's degree in telecommunications, radio, television, and film. And I actually, believe it or not, this is kind of an interesting story. I came to a fork in the road moment at the time. I was 2 weeks away from graduating with my bachelor's degree that took me 7 years to get because I had to go part-time for a while. But anyway, I was 2 weeks away, and I had a job interview with Aaron Spelling Productions. This was in the summer of 1990, yes, and this was right before they started revamping themselves. Spelling Productions at that time had always been known for shows like The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, Vegas.
Yeah.
And they went on hiatus for a while, and they were getting ready to relaunch themselves, of course, with a new series called Beverly Hills 90210. And I didn't know what the show was at the time, but they had a opening for a film runner, and I was interviewed for it. And interestingly enough, when I was at the interview, the guy pretty much offered me the job on the spot. And then when he wanted me to start the next day, I told him, I said, well, I need 2 weeks. 2 weeks is pretty well standard, I think, for most folks. And certainly if I had been working another job, it would have to be. But I was 2 weeks away from graduating from college, and the guy was really pressuring me to start the next day. And the hours were going to be like 7 in the morning till 7 in the evening. And, I just thought to myself, well, if I drop out of school now, how am I going to make up my classes? I certainly wouldn't be able to have the time to do it because that's, a 12-hour day. When would I go? And so I pretty much pleaded with him to just give me the 2 weeks and I'd be his guy. And he just told me, he said, well, if you can't commit to me now, you're no good to me in 2 weeks. So It was a fork in the road moment that I just had to kind of walk away from. And I figured, graduating from school was certainly more important at the time. And I don't regret the decision. But I stayed out there for another year, and then I ended up coming back to my home state of Michigan. I began working, as you had mentioned, at WNIC radio. Certainly at that time, Detroit was number 6 in the nation in terms of radio market share, so it was major market radio. I enjoyed working there as producer on the morning drive time show, as well as their Sunday morning public affairs programs. And then I just had a yearning to want to get into television. And yeah, a friend of mine who worked at the radio station, we just got to chit-chatting about it, and we decided we'll crash the industry. We'll go out, kind of pursue something on our own. It was based off an idea that I had for a local documentary, and it just kind of went from there. And I ended up getting to do what I always dreamed about doing, which were documentaries. I did them independently from the stations, but I was able to work with the stations, certainly to get them on the air and in their final forms. And but what was good about it, the way I had done it, was it put a lot of control of the project into my hands. So I got to do it my way, which is what I really wanted, and I got some nice accolades off it. And then I decided I wanted to write some books, and the first one was about old Detroit TV shows, TV Land Detroit, and then later after that I co-authored a book on Earl Scruggs, which was his first biography, and certainly family approved, Scruggs family approved. And then I wanted to kind of do a testament to my faith in Christ, and that brings us to the book at hand, Staying on the Vine.
Wow. So you never regret. It's interesting. Aaron Spelling was huge. Oh my God.
Oh yeah.
Back then. I mean, he was one of the top TV sitcom producers. So you never said, "Oh my God," and that's amazing. It's 2 more weeks. Did you never wondered, what if I had said yes? Sometimes some of the decisions we make they affect all of the rest of our life. A decision that we make, not just for a little while, the whole rest of it. You never look back and say, "Man, what if I had went with them?"
Exactly. I look back on it and I think to myself, had I gone ahead and done that, where would I be today? I might have a nice career out there, or for all I know, they could have fired me after a couple of weeks. I mean, it's hard to say, but I don't regret the decision, certainly at all. But I think we're all kind of confronted with those moments in our life. You always hope that you make the right one, and I think in the end we always do.
Okay, it's good you don't have any regrets. So
Nope.
Things have gone well. When you were a kid, you majored in. You were one of. I want to tell you, you're one of the few guests on our show. When I ask them, when I do the research and read their bio and what they're doing, a lot of people do nothing close to their major. It's almost amazing. Like, you're one of the few. So many, they do nothing close to their major. That said, what did you dream of becoming when you were a kid?
Well, when I was a kid, I kind of had a real affinity for Hollywood, and I did want to kind of be a part of it. Certainly the acting aspect is what's most attractive to you at that time, because it's what you see and not what you don't see. But as I got older, I started taking classes in high school for television. I started to really like what was going on behind the camera. And me being kind of a shy guy by nature, I kind of learned very quickly that being in front of the camera takes a lot more courage than I was willing to give it. So working behind the scenes really fulfilled a lot in me, and I liked all the creative aspects. I like coming up with the ideas, coming up with something out of nothing, and then watching it materialize into something. And that, for me, is the biggest thrill of it all. And certainly that's what I got to do. And I'm glad that I have the successes that I have. We're on the local level. I always had dreams of going way beyond that, certainly to a national level, which I didn't get to do. But I kind of look back on it and think, the Lord really blessed me because He did give me the successes that I always dreamed about doing, and He gave them to me in a means by which I had control over them. Whereas I think trying to go out to the height that I dreamed of doing, I might not have ever got to the level that I wanted to be at. I could still be doing, I
Really?
guess you could say, grunt work.
Interesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. One of the things too, I'll throw in when I was in college, I did an internship, and it was a very unique one. I didn't quite know 100% when I was in college what kind of an internship I wanted to do. And of course, again, I'm in Southern California, and everybody in radio, television, and film, they all wanted to be directors, they all wanted to be writers, they all wanted to be editors, and all that stuff. And I'm thinking those internships are going to be a dime a dozen. What can I do that's going to be something that's going to be really unique? So when it came time for me to meet with my advisor, I said, I think I'd like to be a casting director. And
Ah.
they had never had anybody uh, uh, approach them with that. And so they set up a special internship just for me with Cenex Casting. That was the sister company of Central Casting. And Central Casting, I think, is still in business today. They go all the way back to 1925, this big casting agency in Burbank, California. And so and they did all casting for union extras. And their sister company, which was basically on the other side of the room, just through the other side of the door, was Cenex Casting, and that was all the non-union. So I got to go there every day to Burbank, sit in the office, and help cast extras in movies, A-list features at that time. And I got to go on movie sets and see big stars and actually just kind of hang out for the morning after I passed out the vouchers. I got to kind of hang around as late as I wanted to, and I usually did up until about lunchtime, because then I had to get back to school and go to class.
Wow.
So it was a very unique experience.
You knew what you wanted to do, and you stayed on that path, which is impressive to me. You knew what you wanted to do. Yeah, you knew what you wanted to do. You didn't get I think that's impressive. So tell us, I want to talk about your books, definitely, but tell us what it was like working at WNIC, producing the shows, and then I also want to ask you the impact you see the Internet in the next coming years having on radio and television. But first, can you tell us what it was like working at WNIC?
Well, at WNIC, the big star there was Jim Harper. He had been on WNIC since the late 70s. He had the biggest morning show that I can remember, which was Harper and Gannon, and then it later became Jim Harper and the Breakfast Club. But I remember listening to Jim and Steve, Harper and Gannon, on the radio in junior high school and in high school. And so when I got to be there in the early 90s, in October of 92 is when I started there, it was a big thrill for me just to be there, just to see them live, to watch them do their show, and then just kind of do whatever it is that they needed me to do. And then I got to learn how to run the big audio console that you see in radio stations. And so then they had me running the board there for other hours, a lot of weekend shifts I had to do for that. But it was a big thrill for me, certainly, to be a part of a big radio gig. And then, of course, that led to being there on Sunday mornings, doing the Sunday morning public affairs shows, which wasn't quite on the same level as the morning drive, but still it was something that I got to do, and just a different aspect of radio. I saw all kinds of things about radio that I really liked. I've had a lot of people tell me that I have a radio voice and that I'd be good on the air, and as much as I thought about it and would love to have done that, I'm not a very good reader. I have dyslexia, and I transpose stuff, so if I'm reading things out loud, I transpose words so easily and so frequently that I knew if I had to read live spots on the air or liners on the air, I'd probably have to pre-record them and then play a tape, which would be right. And because going on the air, I'd probably wind up messing up a live spot, and it wouldn't be good. So I enjoyed my place. It's off the air, and just being there and editing a lot of tapes. They had me do a lot of that, a lot of editing, a lot of promos and things that I did for the morning show, editing contests, other things that they would use, sound effects and bits and things like that. Was a big thrill for me. I loved that, absolutely loved it. In fact, I remember a couple times being there all night editing tape. And it was the old way, too. It wasn't digital. It was before digital editing. Digital editing was just very new at that time. And WNIC didn't have that kind of equipment, so it was the old way with the big reel-to-reel tapes, where you have to really listen, kind of do with the tapes, slow and start, kind of where you hear the voice going to where, and then where to mark it with the grease pencil, and then cut it literally with a razor blade, and then put it back in. And sometimes, you get a little snippet off, and you cut a word off. Now you got to go back and find that little piece that you cut out, put that back in. So, but I loved it. I really loved it. I really truly enjoyed that job.
I wanted to. How different is writing for or working in television versus radio? And I'm asking questions for our listeners who may be interested in going down a similar path that you've gone down.
Well, some people, would kind of think that television is just a natural graduation from or a natural transition from radio, and it's not. They're two very different mediums, and they both have very different expectations with them. I mean, television, everything is about what you see. And, with radio, you don't have to worry about being seen. But certainly in television you do. So everything has to be visually impressive. It can't just sound impressive. I remember being discouraged, and I say the person that was doing this was trying to discourage me, but I had a program director when I was taking my show, Michigan, and started here trying to get it off the ground. I initially wanted to do a co-production with the television stations, and all the TV stations were rejecting me. And one program director said to me very boldly on the telephone, do you know what the history of our stations is of taking things from a first-time producer? It is zero. And since you're a radio person, why don't you stick with what you know and make your show a radio show? And I thought, well, that totally defeats the purpose of what I'm trying to do. I don't want to do a radio show. I want to do a TV show. I want to show vintage pictures, and it shows something that people would actually watch, and as opposed to just listen to. So I didn't let it discourage me, even though it was, I think, kind of meant to do that. But I wasn't going to allow it to do it. God certainly gave me determination and drive to succeed, and and I was very driven to do that. But again, it's a very different medium. I had TV people tell me that if I wanted to start in TV, start out as an intern, start doing, right at the bottom. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go in as a producer. I wanted to be a director. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted to kind of start out, at a much higher level. I didn't want to go back. And at my age at that time, I was in my early 30s, and I didn't want to start down at the bottom and be an intern and just do things like that. I really wanted to I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, exploit the talent that I knew that I had to offer. And so that's how I had to do it independently. And it ended up being very impressive to some of the TV people who said, this just doesn't happen. You just don't crash the industry the way you did, and make something and make something well.
Wow. I tell you,
whatever you do, make sure it's the very best.
You have a clear path, it sounds like, when I hear you talk. You know what you want, and you just keep going forward. Before we start talking about staying on the vine, I had to ask you, as I was researching for your interview, it must have been so exciting after I was going to ask you earlier, and you answered the question if you got discouraged when you were shopping Michigan and started here, and what kept you going. But to go through all that and be told you have to start as an intern, and people telling you this isn't how it's done, why don't you just stick with radio? It must have been so exciting watching Michigan and started here on TV for the first time. Did you have like a house full of family and friends over? Was it like this big, huge celebration? I mean, how exciting would that be?
You know, it's funny because I thought about stuff like that, but I guess just the humility in me prevented me from doing that. I was married at the time in my first marriage, and it was just my wife and I who had just sat down together and watched it. But of course, there was a bunch of phone calls, that were made after that. But it was a big thrill. It was an awesome thrill. I just kept thinking something's going to go wrong and it's not going to air. Something's going to go wrong and it's not going to air. Or you get that doubt that just kind of creeps in because you sometimes think, well, maybe it was too good to be true. But when it came on the air, I was tickled pink, and it was one of the biggest thrills of my life.
Oh, congratulations. Congratulations. Now, we're going to switch to your books. We may come back and talk about TV a little bit. I'm really impressed with when I was just so excited, what you've done in television, just amazing. But switching to your books, what inspired you to write the specific book, Staying on the Vine?
Well, I wanted to put out a testament to my faith in Christ and kind of tell a very compelling story. You know, I've watched a lot of Christian movies, and I've read, Christian books, certainly a lot of nonfiction Christian books, but the Christian movies all tend to be, fictionalized based on, some aspects of the Bible, or based on true stories. And I felt that was the best way to go for me. I felt if I was going to write a book that was Christian themed, how could I approach it? And I'm not a pastor. I don't have any standing in the church. I just attend church, like most folks, and I have my faith. So how am I going to get a book off the ground? Because most of your Christian books, your ones that are nonfiction certainly, are done by pastors or people with some sort of a standing in the church, or people who are well known in the world of Christianity. And certainly I am not. I'm just a regular guy. So what can I do? So that's when it just kind of hit me between the eyes, and I thought, well, maybe I just need to do this as a novel. And so I thought, well, what kind of a story could I tell? And I thought, well, I could use a lot of my own story, a lot of elements of myself in there, a lot of elements of my wife, my second and permanent wife, her testament, bit of her background, and just kind of how we came together and where we went forward in our journeys and all the mistakes in our lives that we made along the way. I wanted to touch upon a whole host of things that I think everybody goes through in their life. I didn't want it just to be misleading. I wanted it to be very real and impact everybody, whether you're a Christian or even if you're a non-Christian. I wanted everybody who could pick up the book and read through the pages and find themselves, or at least a part of themselves, in this book. And that was the whole basis for doing Staying on the Vine, and I'm hoping that I've done that well.
So did you have was there a specific, other than wanting to encourage others based on, your experiences, like this is worth it? You have to believe something is worth it first, I think, to keep going and then share it with others. But did you have, some people it's a traumatic experience and then they sit down and they'll write a book. Was there something, a specific experience you had that made you want to write it, or did you just say, I want to share this story with others based on what I think this is very rewarding to do?
I'm glad you brought that up because you hit on something that I think is very important and that really goes to the core of staying on the vine. A lot of Christian media, people's coming to the Lord that you see is based off of some sort of tragedy in their life. It's something traumatic, whether it was a horrific accident, near-death experiences, or they were rich, now they're poor, whatever tragedy in their life they've experienced. Well, I didn't have that, and I think most people go through life pretty well unscathed. I mean, we all have our problems in life, certainly, and things that are very I don't want to say horrific, but I guess very devastating. That's probably the better way to say it. Very devastating moments in our lives that we can't explain. Why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why did God let this happen? Certainly we ask ourselves in those moments. But I think most folks don't necessarily connect with these really. They do, but they don't. And what I mean by that is, you could go see a movie, a very powerful movie about somebody who experienced a real tragedy in their life, and then brought them to Jesus, and you can be very impacted by that. But then the next day, you go about your life as business as usual. So, and I thought that's probably most people, and certainly that's true of me. So, how can I make a statement of a better life in Christ versus a life without Christ? And the best way I thought to do that was to just kind of use elements of my life, things in my life that I've gone through that are related. I know relatable is not an exact word, but that most people can relate to, and just kind of see, okay, well, now I see that this, obviously isn't going to work in life, and if I go with Christ, then yeah, I will have a better life. So it's more for the everyday person, more for the the everyday life that you live, to show that while you think things in your life might be fine, there are things in your life that probably aren't, and they're not biblically correct. They're not they're not pleasing to God. And here's what they are, and here's what you need to repent from.
Can you give our Off the Shelf listeners an overview, a brief synopsis of Staying on the Vine?
Sure. It's the story of two people, Lindsay Kish and Nick Robinson, and it's about them, how they are born into regular, middle class families that were Christian based, homes that claim to have practiced Christianity, but both Nick and Lindsay, in their own ways, growing up, didn't really see the practice of it, so they grew up as Christians in name only. And of course, by being a Christian in name only, you start to nurture your vices, and then you start to really kind of gravitate towards them. And then that's what happens with them. They both go their own ways apart from God, and really nurture their vices. So when they come of age, now they're wallowing in their sins. And there's sins that I have each one of them kind of represent different sins that are everyday sins, but also very prevalent in our culture. For example, Lindsay kind of represents the sins of power and materialism and money and status, which then leads to gluttony. Then there's Nick, who kind of wallows in pleasures of the flesh, fornication and pornography, and he later turns to mysticism and psychics and tarot and all that kind of stuff. So both of these folks, and these are all things that go on in our society every single day, but how do they get out of them, and what brings them to Christ, and how do they stay in Christ? How do they stay on the vine? Because if you're familiar with the passage in the New Testament, in John, where Jesus says, "I am the vine, you are the branches." As long as the man remains in me and I in him, he will bear fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. And I'm paraphrasing that as best as I can, but certainly that's where the story goes. So it's really seen through the lenses of their life stories, and then them coming together and then developing a romance, and they find out, because each one of them is kind of not the other's type, if you get the idea on that one. Each one of them they're both they have a spiritual attraction is what keeps them together, and through the spiritual attraction that becomes just an ongoing attraction amongst them, to where they fall in love, and certainly they marry, and their life is fulfilled with the blessing of a child, which is something that they both yearn for, and they didn't get in their previous marriages. That's the other thing too. They're both a couple of middle-aged divorcees, and it really does kind of go to second chances, and having a second chance in a life of Christ.
Now, where is the story set, and what is Lindsay Kish? What does she do for a living? Is she a housewife? She said she's into the material aspect of things before she comes to Christ. But so where is the story set, and what does Lindsay do before she meets Nick, and what is Nick's career path?
Well, the story takes place in suburban Detroit, where I am.
Detroit.
And Lindsay is the type of girl that wants to be taken care of. She was very attracted to men who are all about flash and cash, and so she looks to gravitate towards a man who can take care of her. And of course, she makes bad choices in that department. She then ends up having to go to school, and she ends up taking a job in the staffing industry, placing contingent workers into jobs, and that's where she goes. And of course, when she gets there, she makes friends with a woman named Faye, of course, who's a born-again Christian, and she sees how hard she has to work compared to Faye, how Faye is just kind of getting by every day and just having this wonderful life, and yet Lindsay's always having to struggle really hard in everything she does. And then, of course, Faye is one of the types who says to her, "Did you go to church?" Asks her that every Monday morning. "Did you go to church? Did you go to church?" And of course, Lindsay, avoids that, saying, "Look, we should be talking about things like that. And my faith is not your business," and so forth. But then later on, of course, certainly Lindsay ends up going that way, and then, of course, is made fun of by some of the coworkers in the office for doing that. Nick, on the other hand, goes into the career of, he tries to pursue a career in Hollywood. And again, a lot of Nick is based on me, and so therefore Nick is pursuing a career in Hollywood. He doesn't quite make it, but then he realizes the blessings that he got all through doing local productions, and ends up writing a book about it. And so he ends up taking a job working for a distribution company that distributes DVDs of Hollywood features. So he's in sort of an offshoot of the industry, a very offshoot of it, but yet he does have a connection to it, and that's, of course, the career that he's in at the time that he meets Lindsay, and so that's where they are. They both end up being career people.
I was going to ask you, had they known each other before? Had they crossed paths before and years pass and then they meet again, but they meet for the first time in their middle years? Some people,
yes,
they meet when they're kids, and then they go on and live their lives, and then they meet up again. So I was going to ask you if that was the case with Lindsay and Nick.
No, it's not, but they find out that they have very kindred spirits. In other words, it's almost as though they were made for each other. Their experiences in life were very much the same, yet slightly different. They didn't know each other, but they lived a lot of the same things. They went through a lot of the same things, with different variations, but their paths were the same, and they meet up, when they're both divorced. Lindsay in her late 30s, Nick in his early 40s.
What made them suddenly? So Lindsay was into the materialism. She gave her life to Christ. We understand, but we still keep our personalities, and our likes and dislikes don't change when we become Christians or any faith. It doesn't change your personality or what you like and don't like. If you like orange, you still like orange. If you like a certain, those things don't change. If you're an extrovert, you're still an extrovert. And then, Dick, what made them decide that not only did they both move away from, like, Lindsay, the materialism, and Nick, just maybe he was chasing women. Not only did they move away from these things, but I also would have to say, my first marriage failed, and I'm not doing it again. I can walk with Christ, but I can also do that and be single. What made Lindsay and Nick ready to do the work to enjoy the rewards of a good relationship the second time?
Well, they were both lonely. They both knew that they needed, or I shouldn't really say needed, but they both wanted to share their lives with somebody. They felt that their lives, what they went through the first time around in their first marriages, they didn't get what they needed to really fulfill them in marriage, and certainly they didn't want to give up on marriage. They both had that foundation that they believed in marriage. They wanted to certainly share their lives with people. And so that's what they do, but they've come to realize that the lives that they lived were very much in sin, and there are still elements in there. I'll give you a real good example. Nick, the character of Nick, he's very much into body image. You see that in young Nick. He looks for the most beautiful women that he can find, and those are the women that he pursues, because he's got this he falls for the cosmopolitan image that society puts on women, and of course when he meets Lindsay, she's not of that caliber at all. She's actually overweight and just an average ordinary woman. And so he's got to be able to kind of see past that. And, of course, during their time of their relationship, one of the things that they do is Lindsay has a desire to get her figure back, because she was very attractive in her younger years, and then she developed I guess you could say, a habit of overeating, and because she looked to use food for comfort, and went on the path of gluttony to escape from the realities of what was going on in her life, because it made her feel good for those few minutes while she was eating. And so she had this goal of wanting to get her figure back. And so when they come together, she asks Nick to kind of help her do that. So they both kind of work together on that. And so that was kind of a thing that they work through together. It's one of the things that helps keep their bond, is they're both kind of looking to be what they want to be, what they used to be, I guess you could say, in their old lives, but they kind of have to see things differently, but yet there's still that element in them, I guess you could say.
Yeah, we still our personality. Some people think your personality is going to change, and you're going to become you're still going to, like what you like and don't like. Generally, you're not going to become a whole new person.
Exactly.
Your focus and things will change. I want to talk now, too, and I don't remember if I heard this name before I started researching for your interview, but Earl Scruggs. So can you talk to us about the process of co-writing the book. Earl Scruggs, a bluegrass legend. Is he like really widely known? I mean, like a Dolly Parton, a Johnny Cash. Is he widely known, like in certain circles like that?
When it comes to the five-string banjo, there's no bigger name than that of Earl Scruggs. He's definitely the man. He is credited with really popularizing the three-finger style of banjo playing. The banjo picking. And he really brought that to, he didn't invent it, but he really brought that to the forefront and made it nationally known. Earl's work, most people have heard Earl, but they don't really know that it's Earl. If you've ever watched the Beverly Hillbillies, the theme song that you hear at the beginning of the show and at the end of the show, well, the banjo that you hear, that's Earl Scruggs.
Oh,
and
okay.
Yep. In fact, Earl and his former partner, Lester Flatt, actually did appearances on the Beverly Hillbillies. They appeared in 6 episodes as friends of the Clampetts from back in the hills. And if you've ever seen the movie Bonnie and Clyde with Warren Beatty and Faye Dunaway, there's banjo music that you hear during the car chase scenes. And that's Earl Scruggs. That's his signature tune, "Foggy Mountain Breakdown," which has become like the anthem of the five-string banjo. Earl appeared regularly at the Grand Ole Opry. Again, he was about as big as you could get in bluegrass music, and so he's certainly the inspiration of everybody who plays a five-string banjo, who picks a five-string banjo. Earl was certainly their primary influence. So, very, very big name. He had a tremendous impact on a lot of careers in country music as well.
Did you interview him in person and record like his responses as you were compiling the book? How did you collect the material for the book Earl Scruggs, a Bluegrass Legend?
Yeah, actually, it's called Earl Scruggs Banjo Icon. But
okay.
Earl passed away. He passed away in 2012. I started working on this project in 2015, and really my former banjo teacher, David Russell, who is the co-author on the book, he had this idea to do a biography on Earl because it had never been done before. And I wanted to encourage him to pursue it. And, of course, as we talked about it, he started asking me, well, will you work on it with me? Will you work on it with me? And at first I was very apprehensive about doing it because I didn't know if I really wanted to or if I knew enough to do it. So I kind of just said, well, I'll think about it. I let 3 months go by. And I finally started thinking, hey, maybe I do want to do that. Maybe I really would like to do it. I watched my daughter really embrace Earl's music as much as a 3-year-old at that time could do. She's 8 now, but at that time she was 3. And so, I'm watching her enjoy the banjo music. And so I thought, okay, well, I'd like to do it. So I called him up and I said, what's going on with that Scruggs book? And he said, well, I haven't stopped thinking about it. And I said, do you still want me to be a part of it? He said, yes. And I said, all right, well, let's get started on it now. And so one of the first things I did was I reached out to the Scruggs family and to ask, their thoughts on it, because Earl, again, had passed away. His wife, Louise, had passed away, who had managed his career. And so it was really reaching out to his sons and getting their blessing to do it. And then also at the same time, too, contacting everybody that we could think of in bluegrass music, particularly the banjo players, to discuss their memories with Earl. And it included some big-name country stars that participated in the book. Vince Gill participated. Charlie Daniels participated. Roger McGuinn, who is a member of the rock group The Byrds, participated in it. Steve Martin, the comedian and banjo player, participated. So we were able to very successfully get interviews with these folks. And Max Baer, who was Jethro on the Beverly Hillbillies, participated. And so it was just sitting down and interviewing them, getting their stories and their memories, and that's kind of how the book came about.
Wow. Once again, you're just going after it. You're just going after. So can you tell us about some of the things that you do cover about him in the book? Do you take readers from, like, his childhood through his early career development and some of the highlights in his career in the book?
Yeah, it's a complete biography from his birth all the way up to his death, and it's a book that really honors his legacy. In fact, the last chapter of the book is nothing but a testament of everybody who was impacted, kind of their journeys on learning Scruggs style playing, and why they wanted to play the banjo, and how Earl really played a major role in that, and of course their memories of Earl as well. But it's a complete biography, and it really just walked me through how he started three-finger picking, and how he did it accidentally. He was learning a song called Reuben, which is the big bluegrass standard, and he was two-finger picking, and then he started to incorporate the middle finger in there almost by accident, and which is, again, what was his goal, but he just did it serendipitously. And, it's the song Reuben, and it was in the living room of his parents' house, and he screamed, he was just a boy at the time, I've got it. He learned how to do it. And just his hours of practicing, and just his audition with Bill Monroe, the founder of bluegrass music, and his years playing with Monroe, and how he really reinvented the instrument in 1945 at the Grand Ole Opry when he came out and he started playing. People listened to the Opry on the radio, and of course there were those that were in attendance at the Opry in Nashville. And nobody had ever seen or heard anybody play the banjo like Earl Scruggs did with that three-finger style, because it was always a frailing, kind of like a strumming style. And, like Roy Clark, he was another one who participated. Roy Clark had said that, he said, I thought this guy had 7 fingers on one hand and 12 fingers on the other, because I didn't know how he was getting that sound out of that instrument. And then, of course, him and Lester Flatt, they left Bill Monroe. They started their own band, the Foggy Mountain Boys, which became widely known as just Flatt and Scruggs. And it takes you through the evolution of Foggy Mountain Breakdown, his signature song. Also, he invented what was called Scruggs tuners, which kind of changed the tuning of the banjo. On the second, third string, you go from G to D just by tuning it with a simple tune. It starts and stops it, and it gives it kind of a twangy sound, kind of like a wow sound. So as you're playing a song, you could do that while you're playing, and it just kind of gives an added edge. And it was very revolutionary at the time. It was an invention that he came up with that's still used today. And then, of course, going to doing the Beverly Hillbillies, how Paul Henning saw them at the Ash Grove Coffee House in Los Angeles, and decided these are the guys who are going to do the opening and closing to the Beverly Hillbillies. And Paul Henning, the creator of the Beverly Hillbillies, was so enamored with Flatt and Scruggs that he wanted the world to see them, so he put them on the show. They first come on in season 1 as both being in love with Jed's cousin Pearl, and then the last time they're on there, I think, was in 1967, right around the time Bonnie and Clyde, the movie, had come out. And so then there's the breakup of Flatt and Scruggs, and then Earl had to reinvent himself. He wanted to play with his sons, Gary and Randy, and then his youngest son Steve later on. And they formed the Earl Scruggs Review, which one of the early members of that was country music star Charlie Daniels. And this is way back when Charlie Daniels was just working for record producer Bob Johnston. And, Charlie had credited Earl for really taking him under his wing and and helping him develop his craft as an artist. And then it just goes really right to
you have we have about 5 minutes left, and I have so many other questions to ask you, and I'm just not going to get to them all. But really, really, really quick, I had so many other questions to ask you. But can you introduce our Off The Shelf listeners to TV Land Detroit? This looks so exciting to me, and I wanted to ask you how many Detroit-based TV shows were there during like the 40s and the 70s that you were able to pull this TV Land Detroit together?
Well, TV Land Detroit came out of a conversation me and a buddy were having about old, Detroit TV shows, and I thought that'd be a really cool book to do. And certainly Detroit had its fair share, just as many other markets at that time, of original shows, kids shows, dance shows, movie hosts, local talk shows, and such. And so, rather than doing all of the shows and having a book that would be about 1,000 pages long, I knew I could only do a limited number, so I chose 25 of the top best remembered programs, and in all those different genres. And it was done by a survey, and then later I consulted with some Detroit television personalities, the older ones, and they all agreed that the list that I came up with was a very good one. So I wanted to present the shows with a lot of depth of character, what they were to the audience, what went on the shows, certainly behind the scenes, and just the impact that they really made in Detroit. And of course, it starts, the opening chapter. The first show that I cover was that of Soupy Sales, and most folks know Soupy Sales, the famous comedian who has since passed just a few years ago. But Soupy, his career really launched in Detroit, Michigan, when he did his show from 1953 to 1960 here, Lunch with Soupy. And, of course, that became a national show on the ABC network in 1960. And so it was just a matter of going out and getting in touch with everybody who used to work on the shows, in front of the camera, behind the camera, and then, of course, some fans. And I was quite happy with the book when it was finished, and a lot of those TV people that I did interview, that was I think the final interview for many of them. A lot of them have passed. The people. It's funny because on the cover of the book, I put together about 10 different people on the cover. I had my cousin do an animation, an artist handwritten or hand-drawn portrait kind of a bunch of the TV personalities in the living room watching TV. And when I started the project, only 3 of the people that are on the cover had passed. And now today, only 2 of the people on the cover are still with us.
Oh, my goodness. You got to live while you're here. You got to do it. And they, to their credit, and I think that's the difference in the decisions that we make. Like, you've gone on and done things you wanted to do, whether somebody told you no, and you, like, I'm going to do it, and you found a way. At the end of it, of our journeys here, that's what it comes down to. It really does. You're going to just do average, or you're going to go and do what you really want to do. You have done, what an amazing career. Even if you don't see it that way, you have. You have had an amazing career, and you're still going, which is good. Can you tell our Off The Shelf listeners where they can get copies of the films you've worked with or TV shows and your books? Where can Off The Shelf listeners get copies of your works?
Well, my books certainly through the usual outlets, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. You can also get them off the publishers' websites directly, too. For TV Land Detroit, it's University of Michigan Press. For Earl Scruggs, it's Rowman and Littlefield. And for Staying on the Vine, it's Crosslink Publishing. But they're all on, again, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and bunch of other book outlets online. And as far as getting in touch with me directly, if anybody would like, I have an email address, tvlanddetroit@yahoo.com, and I do check it regularly, and I'll be happy to respond to all inquiries, and I just hope folks will enjoy the work that I've done, and again the latest work, Staying on the Vine, which I feel is very, very certainly very important. I think everybody who reads that will see themselves in there, and it's a good way to kind of see where you are in life, and just know that the best way to live life is certainly in honoring and worshiping and loving and obeying our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Yes, stand on the vine, stand in Christ. We have been honored to have Gordon Castelnero here with us this morning. He is just of so many different works. Books he's authored include Stand on the Vine, his latest, TV Land Detroit, and Earl Scruggs, a banjo icon. He loves Detroit. He hails from Detroit. He graduated from California State University with a degree in radio, television, and film. And his documentary, Michigan, it started here, aired on December 7th, 1996, and it earned 11.5 rating and a Michigan Emmy nomination. Again, we encourage you to go out and support Gordon Castelnero, and he's online at dreamworldenterprises.net/Castelnero, and that's spelled Castelnero. Remember, you guys, the quote we started with, when you do something out of love, you don't count the cost. We want to thank Gordon for being here with us. Please go out and support him, his books, and the TV documentaries, the works that he's worked on. And if you came into the show midstream, you want to finish his streaming, you can listen to it in its entirety in the archives and share it with others who might be interested in Earl Scruggs, Detroit television, TV Land type Detroit works, and Staying on the Vine, of course, which is timeless of staying in Christ. Thank you to Gordon Castelnero for being here with us on Off the Shelf this morning. And thank you to each of you who tune in, and our loyal listeners. Thank you for being here with us on Off the Shelf Radio. Remember, you are amazing. You are awesome. You are incredible. Go out and create a fabulous day for yourself. And remember, if you're in the daylight savings time, to set your clock back an hour early Sunday morning. Thank you, Gordon. I'll shoot you an email. Bye for now.
All right.